Good evening. My name is Amy Mabley, and I'm the Vice Chair of the North Andover School Committee, and I'd like to call this meeting to order of April 1st, 2021. And we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. First, I guess we have to continue reading this big thing.
Roll call in.
Do that first or read this first?
I think you're going to read that one first.
Okay.
All right.
So, pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing a strict limitation on the number of people that gather in one place, this meeting of the North Andover School Committee may be conducted via remote participation by some or all committee members and staff. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and or parties with a right and or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the town's website at northandoverma.gov. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to hear the meeting may do so on their televisions by turning to Comcast Channel 99 or Verizon Channel 28 or online at northandovercam.org. No in-person attendance of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite the best efforts, we will post on the school department website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible. You can also access the meeting at the YouTube link, which is found on the agenda, top of our agenda. Please silence all your devices as this meeting is being recorded. And I will first call who's present here tonight. As you can see, Chair Picard could not be here this evening, and that's why I am chairing the meeting as Vice Chair. And do we have Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
And Ms. Vitsky?
Yes.
And our new member, Pam Petrowski?
Yes.
And Dr. Gilligan, would you like to introduce your guests?
Sure. Assistant Superintendent for Finance, Dr. Mealy
is here.
Remotely, Assistant Superintendent for Teaching and Learning, Lorene Marks.
Here.
Special Education Executive Director, Marcy Bacuzzi.
Here.
Okay. And then Mr. Jackson.
Good evening.
Would you like to introduce your team? Because I cannot see all of them on the screen from here, but I'd love for you to introduce your team that's here tonight.
I'd be happy to. I am joined by Assistant Principal Brooke Randall.
Here.
Assistant Principal Scott Young.
Here.
Guidance Director Steve Nugent.
Here.
And Special Education Administrator Paula Sexton.
Great.
And Paul, you're muted. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Oh. And do we have our student reps here tonight?
Yes, we're all here.
Oh, Eamon's here. Okay. Mika?
Here.
And we have our new reps.
Ethan and Lindsay?
I saw
I'm Ethan.
Ethan here?
There he is.
I'm also here.
Excellent.
All right,
Awesome.
thought I saw you.
And we have the committee too.
Oh, and Dr. Mealy, would you like to introduce the School Capacity Subcommittee?
Sure. So we have Lori Aria. Or you just need to say that you're here, acknowledge it that you're here.
Sorry. Yes, I'm here.
Thank you. And we have Michael Liss,
Hi there.
Stan Lippert,
Hello.
Bill Hart.
How you doing?
We have Christina Harrikel
Here.
and Christy Martin.
Here.
And myself and Holly have already been introduced.
Great. Okay, so we will move on, I believe, to public comment, and we have 4 public comments this evening. I can tell you it is hard to read these through sucking air through your mask. I will do my best. It's helpful that Helen doesn't have to do that, so. Okay, the first is from Rob and Kelly Marie of Carty Circle, and they wrote, "Dear school committee members and Superintendent Gilligan, my wife Kelly and I are writing to you as parents of high school junior, offering feedback to potential structural change to division of the school year. If a decision to move to a semester-based 2022 school year remains modifiable, we hope you will consider this input. The last 13 months have presented massive disruptions to all facets of student and parent lives. We all hope that this is subsiding for good. Setting aside the educational substance of dividing the school year differently, structural changes for students without COVID disruption far behind us are themselves disruptive. In addition, having a senior graduate with a confusing transcript, in parentheses, 3-year trimesters, 1-year semesters, can't be helpful for students who aren't yet through a chaotic period as they approach college applications. Focusing any 2022 energy on anything but making up 2021 ground in the classroom is off target for those high school students with 1 year left. Our hope is that you'll minimally grandfather students near graduation to a trimester schedule or otherwise phase in, quote unquote, changes in the division of the school year to impact new incoming high school students only. Should that be impractical to administer, we strongly request this change be deferred until COVID-related disruption is far behind everyone. Thank you for your time, Rob and Kelly Marie." And then from our form, we have some more. The first is from Eamon O'Carroll of Hawthorne Place, who says, "Good evening. I recently learned that it has been nearly 10 years since North Andover formed a committee solely dedicated to the purpose of changing school," hold on, whoops. It's too narrow, I gotta widen this column here. "School start times. The outcome of that committee's findings was the school committee voting to push back start times for all school levels, a great change. As has been made clear, the new NAHS schedule and the time when school starts are separate issues. But really they are not. As NAHS prepares to make this major change to its schedule, this presents an obvious opportunity to push our school start times forward. It would be foolish if this committee does not seize the opportunity, an opportunity readily available to them, to change start times by moving them later. Our old normal, in quotes, necessitated most older students maintaining sleep schedules that are neither biologically healthy nor maintained feasibly. After this past year, there's been a lot more emphasis on students' mental health. Do not let that heightened attention go to waste and become nothing more than cheap talk. The best thing that could come out of this awful year is lasting, meaningful, positive change. There is no single policy change that would more greatly benefit the mental health of students than a concerted effort to move our school start times forward. This committee and this town are already looking forward to the future, to what the future is. As North Andover moves toward whatever the quote-unquote new normal would look like, this committee should make the change to school start times now. Do not wait another 10 years before addressing the issue. The opportunity is here, is now, and the window is rapidly closing. Please do it. Thank you." Thank you, Eamon. And the next is from Stan Limpert, 43 Stone Cleave Road. "How much federal stimulus money will the district be receiving? How long will it have to spend the money? Will this be in addition to the money already promised by the town manager for FY23? Will the district be able to get any of the town stimulus money? Thank you, Mr. Limpert." And the third on the form here is from Dave Brown, 35 Old Farm Road. "I want to congratulate Andrew McDevitt and Pam Petrowski on their election and for running a respectful and appropriate campaign, and I was glad to get to know them better during the process. I hope that they will incorporate the ideas and energy we brought as challengers into their service as committee members. I pledge my support to them as well as to the rest of the committee as you embark on the significant challenges ahead for our schools. I also stand ready to participate as a citizen-volunteer in any way that I can and that will be productive. Sincerely, Dave Brown, candidate for school committee." And those are our public comments. Thank you, everyone. And next, we will move on to the consent agenda, which is the approval of minutes from our last meeting.
So I'll move to approve the minutes as presented in the packet for March 18th, 2021.
Second.
Motion by Mr. McDevitt, a second by Ms. Vitsky. Any discussion? All right, so we can do a roll call vote. Ms. Vitsky?
Yes.
Ms. Petrowski?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
And Amy, I vote yes. Thank you. And so then we're on to our students' report. And it's exciting that all four of you are here, and take it away.
Thank you. Trimester 2 ended on March 19th and trimester 3 began on March 22nd. So students are starting to adjust to the change in trimesters. The grade portal also also closed on March 18th and reopened on March 26th. So yeah, students are adjusting to this new trimester.
The Muslim Student Association will be observing Ramadan as well as celebrating Islamic History Month, and they will be putting up posters.
In addition, the school is helping support the Anne Bradstreet Poetry Contest, open to all North Andover residents to submit up to 2 pieces, which is run by the Town Poetry Association.
NAS Black and Red is celebrating National Poetry Month and will have prompts for students to engage at school and on their website.
The National Honor Society has sent out application information for eligible juniors this week.
And the seniors who weren't able to attend their in-person induction last year did have a virtual one a few weeks ago on March 11th.
The 1,000 Folded Cranes fundraiser through Asian Pacific Islander Club is ongoing and splitting funds to stop AAPI hate organization as well as ACDC as a collective measure to end racist attacks on the Asian community.
And with the weather warming up, Environmental Club has been able to start meeting at the beginning of the trimester. And as of now, the days are split for different cohort days. But once we're all back in school, everyone will be able to participate together.
And following that theme of clubs, the Race Amity Club at the North Andover High School was recently able to participate in a professional development session that was put on by Brian Sheehy, the NAS History Department Coordinator. Moving on from that, as you all know, I love to talk about sports, so I'll give you a little bit of an update here. The boys and girls track teams at the high school currently remain undefeated with 2-0 records, and the varsity football team maintains a 1-1 record at the moment. They'll be facing, I believe, Tewksbury this coming Friday. And the season, because of COVID, because it's the fall to floater season, is drawing to a close quickly. So there's only about 3 weeks left before we move right into that spring season.
In addition, the North Andover High School choirs are preparing for an upcoming outdoor concert performance on April 14th. It hasn't been decided how many and if people will be allowed to attend and where specifically it will be held outside, but the choirs are working hard and preparing for this concert for this year.
And then lastly, we wanted to congratulate both Mr. McDevitt and Ms. Petrowski on their victory and welcome Ms. Petrowski to the committee. So thank you very much. That's our report for tonight, and we'll take any questions you may have now.
Thank you all very much. Do any of my colleagues have any questions for our excellent students?
No, thank you very much.
No, thank you.
Great job as always, guys. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and good luck with the new try.
Thank you.
And as you know, you're welcome to stay, but you're not required to, so it's up to you. Thank you. And we can move on to the superintendent's report. Dr. Gilligan?
Great. Is Eamon still here? Or did he go?
I think we just missed them.
I think you might have.
Oh, well, if you get a chance on the front website at the NorthAndoverPublicSchools.com on my Twitter feed, there's a piece from our history department chair at the high school, Brian Sheehy. He was working with students on teaching hidden treasures and hidden histories, and he did a wonderful piece on Salem Poor and enslaved African American and his story, and it was just remarkable. So if you get a chance to check it out at the YouTube, absolutely amazing. So wonderful job, Eamon. Secondly, the big news, we're coming back to school, reuniting. We've been in school all year, but we are coming back full in person for elementary K through 5. So the Bradstreet, the Atkinson, the Kittredge, the Thompson, the Sargent, and the Franklin. And that will start on Monday, April 5th. And it's been a lot of work and a lot of preparation, but the teams have been going at it really hard. And we're really excited that they've put the right things in place so that we can get our students back in school. Next up would be the middle school and the high school. And they'll be returning, as you may already know, April 28th for the North Andover Middle School, which is a Wednesday, and Thursday, April 29th for the North Andover High School. So they will be returning on those dates. We will have more information going out next week about the plans at the middle school and the high school, and we're currently working really closely, negotiating with the North Andover Teachers Association on this at this time. And then I'm very excited that our teachers will be at Greater Lawrence Family Health on April 10th to get their second dose of the COVID-19 vaccine. So it'll be really exciting to get North Andover Public School teachers to get their second dose. And really a big thanks again to Richie Napolitano, the Senior Vice President at Greater Lawrence Family Health, and the real support from Rep. Christina Minacucci and helping us do this. I think we were the first in the region to be able to get in on this, and it's pretty remarkable, so we're excited about that. And that is it for the superintendent's report tonight.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Dr. Gilligan. And as the sudden chair, I do not have a chair's report, but that's, I think we've covered most things through the agenda anyway. So we're going to move right on to old business, which is the North Andover High School proposed schedule change to a 2-semester format. And what we have planned for that is a public hearing. And I don't know, Dr. Gilligan, if there's anything else you want to say, or can I just go into launching the public hearing?
Well, if anyone hadn't seen the documents that are linked or on the website, I thought we maybe would start with just a really brief overview of what's happening.
We have to move to go into a public meeting.
Okay.
So,
You can do that now then.
yeah, it's kind of like a play within a play, but,
Yep.
okay. So, are we ready to do that?
Yeah, I didn't know if you had
I just
any
didn't know if
big
you wanted
presentation.
a little synopsis or preview.
Well, why don't we move to the public hearing and we can decide what you're going to preview. So that sounds fine. Thank you,
All right.
Mr. McDevitt. Go ahead.
All right, so I will, usually it says so here, so I apologize if I missed the wording entirely, but, or exactly, but I will move that we enter a public hearing regarding the proposed high school schedule to the semester plan. Is there a second?
I didn't know if you were done.
Oh,
Second.
sorry, yeah.
Sorry. So a motion by Mr. McDevitt, a second by Ms. Vitsky. I'm trying to turn my volume off. Okay, good. And a roll call vote, Ms. Vitsky,
Yes.
Ms. Petrowski,
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt,
Yes.
and Ms. Maley, I say yes. So we are now in the public hearing, and I am willing to welcome anybody who wants to join if they click through. If you want to do any introduction, this would be a fine time to do that.
But while people are doing that, we may just want to remind them that if they wish to participate in the public meeting, the link is on the agenda.
Okay. I guess we do know that. So there's, if you look at the agenda and you link where the little white open circle is, public hearing, proposed high school schedule, if you go in there and open that document, in the 4th paragraph is the Meet link to get to this Google Meet. That is the meeting within the meeting here, and that's why you're stuck looking at my face.
Right.
And then there's also a phone number if you'd rather call in that way.
All right, I don't know if we can put it on the board, but, I don't know how.
I think I would have to, let me try to share my screen, see if I can do that.
Could you just do it in a chat?
Let me try that.
The upper,
Yep, I have to copy it first, hold on.
Amy's enjoying
I
this
can just
very
read it to you.
close-up of her.
Yeah, it's
I know,
horrifying.
it's very
so-
close.
I'm sorry, guys, it's nasty.
No, it's not.
Can you just go to the upper right, the chat? There you go.
It's not very big,
I don't know how to.
but I have it, see, it's big on my screen, so.
Ah.
I can try to share my screen if you want. It's right on the agenda. Hold on. I tried to present. Hold on a second.
I'll read it out if, give people half a second to grab a pencil or, but it's 314-666-2333. Again, 314-666-2333. And the PIN access code is 143-024-283 #. Again, 143-024-283 #.
And it is right on the agenda, if you have the agenda.
Yep.
That you can open. It's linked, like I said, under 8B, 8A, the little dot, and it's the fourth paragraph.
Meeting in a meeting is difficult in a virtual world.
Yeah.
It's like a breakout.
And there's a chance that we won't have any public hearing people, but we certainly want to leave this open for a little bit. So if you want to go over any of the details of it, Dr. Gilligan, while we wait for people to consider joining, we can do that.
Yeah, I'd be happy to invite Mr. Jackson and his team. As many folks may know, there's a proposal for a schedule change at North Andover High School. And if they could maybe outline the process and how it's gone so far. This is the second reading, and then the public hearing. Madam Chair, would be for folks to ask some questions or call in with some input on this.
All right, now we're getting some people. Oh, it's all of
And-
our people.
So I
Okay.
would start with, Mr. Jackson, Mr. Nugent, Ms. Sexton, and the team, Scott and Brooke.
All right. So now everybody's in here, so whoever wants to talk, I think it'll end up cutting over to your face being big, I think. Right now it's Lorene.
All right, I'll
Mike's
try.
not on.
We didn't hear anything. I think we all just got in, so we didn't hear anything before what you were saying, just so you know.
Okay, so we're waiting to see if any public wants to join the public hearing. So far, we don't have any, but if you want to give a little overview, that's certainly fine, or if anybody who has joined would like to ask any questions.
So I don't think that Mr. Jackson and his team heard me earlier when they were logging in, but there's a plethora of information on the proposed schedule change at North Andover High School on the website, and I thought they could give a little brief synopsis of what's been happening, the process, why, and they were going to talk a little bit about any feedback they've received through the virtual meetings they've been holding and some of the other processes on the timeline, and then it would be into the public hearing.
Sure. Happy to give a brief update, and then we can go in and go from there. Back on, I think it was March 14th on a Sunday night, we sent information out to all of our families. Mr. Gonzalez shared it with the middle school families, included a video, about a 10-minute video with the story of the schedule change, some sample schedule of courses, and the information about why we're doing it now. We had a frequently asked questions that we updated on the website, and we put the new bell schedule overview document together for the public. From there, we also had a Google form where people could submit questions throughout the process. And then we, throughout I'd say the next 2-3 weeks, we had 2 parent meetings, Google Meet, where we kind of gave an overview again, answered some clarifying questions. We shared the video with our students during our advisory block. We presented the school committee meeting back on, I think it was Thursday the 18th. And we met with students on Monday, the March 22nd as well, and took some questions from the students. Then we had the second parent meeting. Our parent meetings had, I think we were close to 14, 15 on the first one. And then we had, I think it was 5 or 6 on the second one. Miss Mabley was there. She's nodding affirmatively, so I think that was
I went
correct.
to both of them, yep.
And we're here tonight. So that's kind of the update on the rough process we used. We're happy to add any context or answer any questions.
So, Mr. Jackson, could you give us a little bit of an idea of the questions that maybe the parents and the students asked, and or what was different from the student perspective and the parents? I'm just kind of curious.
Yeah, and I'll let Steve we'll kind of piggyback this one too. I think the students, and I'll start with the students. We met with a student council, and a lot of the students were current juniors, and some of our current seniors. So we took a lot of questions from them about their specific, scenarios, just like the public comment that was shared earlier in the meeting. Concerns over making that transition for their last year at high school. And we were able to talk about course-wise and opportunities and let people know that, everyone's on track to graduate. Mr. Nugent, you want to add a little bit on that in particular too? I know we have a nice answer for the public comment that was made earlier in the night too.
Yeah, I think, it's a great question, our comments, and I think like we've done the transitioning to a new GPA system, so the way we weighted our grades back a number of years ago, and we also moved away from class rank. So those were two big significant changes that we made, and what we thought was best for our students at that time, that's why we did it. So as a result, to make sure that any of our rising seniors, their applications were not negatively impacted, we edited our school profile. And a school profile, it's a quick snapshot of your high school, your senior class, some about the academics, things like that. And it accompanies every single application that goes out to any college. It goes to a lot of times to job applications, things like that. So we edited the profile to make sure it reflected what the changes were and why we did them. So that's one thing, just to address the public comment from earlier in the evening. I think that was something that was, that was how we've addressed that issue as far as the significant change. I addressed the why now. The why now is because this is what's best for our students. We totally understand there's been a lot of change, and but if you think about the current freshmen and sophomores and ninth graders, if we go back to our old schedule and then back to this new schedule, like they're still experiencing significant change. So we think, again, the reason why we came before the school committee and went on this world tour with trying to promote the new schedule was because we think this is what's best for our students, and we wouldn't do anything that would jeopardize any student's application. Me speaking as the father of 3 teenagers and one who's applying to college now and one to soon be. So I feel like that's something that we just felt was the best for our students. As far as adding to what Chet said, I thought the students were awesome. I think they were most concerned about the teachers and, are they ready for this? Do they want this? And the parents, they had some great questions, but most of them were really just complimentary of the fact that, hey, finally, this is something that we've been all pulling for and really waiting for.
Thank you. Well, so far, the public hearing's been open for, 5 minutes or so. We have not had anybody join other than our meeting participants, but we can either keep that open and ask our own questions, or we can close that and then continue to have our own discussion, whichever you are more comfortable with. I mean, the public meeting is meant to be for the public, but no one has arrived.
I would like to make a suggestion. I mean, I think it's a little bit difficult for people sometimes to get into the meeting and then kind of for it to transition over. So it might be beneficial if we ask some of our questions.
I think that's great.
To give the public a chance to join in and perhaps, we'll answer a question or we'll ask a question and have it answered that somebody might be trying to dial in on. So
I think that makes sense because I wouldn't want to close this, and I also don't want to sit here with it just waiting. So I think if you want to continue your questions, Mr. McDevitt, or if Ms. Vitsky or Ms. Petrowski have any questions, or if I do, we can do that.
Go ahead.
All right. So again, and this is probably a little bit for Mr. Nugent. I still remain, I love looking at the math that's identified here in our presentation and how much easier it becomes to see the progression of our students and kind of how they move. If we look at our current state, it's a little bit like a bowl of spaghetti. And as we look at the new one, it's pretty streamlined as the students kind of move and progress. I think the piece that just concerns me an awful lot about this is, to get into 8th grade algebra, it's really based upon your 7th grade math. And, I think there are a lot of students who might develop a little bit later in some of their academic areas. And I feel like we are targeting and tracking students from 7th grade on into this course. So I understand that, you somewhat have to start somewhere, but I'm wondering, Mr. Nugent and maybe Mr. Jackson, if you could just talk a little bit more about how a student has that opportunity, maybe they get to their freshman year and they just really start to embrace math and they love it and they are accelerating. How do they move forward? How do they get those more challenging math classes without feeling penalized for being a 7th grader?
Yeah, great question. I'm actually going to let Ms. Randall handle this one. She spoke about it at the presentation a little earlier. I think toward the bottom half of that presentation, we had that math example that you referenced does look like spaghetti to a much cleaner version. So maybe Ms. Randall could talk about those pathways, and which we work to have in a trimester model, and also we're going to have in our semesterized full-year model as well.
Absolutely. Thanks, Mr. Jackson, and thanks for the question, Mr. McDevitt. I can't present anything on my screen, so I apologize. I'm just going to kind of talk through some of the pathways without being able to show you a graphic here on the screen. However, the question as far as how can students, accelerate into...
So are we still offline? Is this missing thing?
What was that?
I am. I can't hear anybody.
Hello?
So are you having trouble hearing? Someone just spoke. I didn't know who it was.
I think it's just background noise.
Okay. Go ahead, Ms. Randall.
All right. Sorry about that. We'll continue. So for this upcoming year specifically...
So I clicked on the YouTube link from the agenda and at least watch the meeting there.
Okay, so I don't know who's talking.
I guess we can cut out after here.
Who is?
That's Michael Liz talking.
Okay.
Do you want to text them or?
I don't have his phone number.
So,
I guess I don't know if there's a different length, because there's definitely people on that menu right now.
Sorry, guys. They're not even in our meeting, so I don't know if North Andover Cam can, Mr. Liss isn't joined this meet, so I don't know if you can mute the other group. No? Okay.
All right.
So, oh, I just closed the whole thing. Sorry. Shoot. I was trying to make it.
Not going well.
Sorry. I'm back.
Why don't we just take a vote?
Nice try, Mr. Nugent.
Well, we did go ahead, Brooke. Sorry about that.
Yep.
I don't know
Okay.
if we can somebody can text the other group to stop having a conversation. That'd be great.
Sure. All right, take 3. All right, so with this particular transition year, and I know, this is going to be a transition year unlike on any other, there are going to be some summer opportunities this coming summer for students, particularly that are currently in 8th grade math, if they'd like to, if they feel like they're already at that point, come 7th grade into 8th grade, now coming into 9th grade, where they feel like they want to accelerate even at this point into our honors level Algebra 1 and Geometry course, which will run for a full year. There will be some summer opportunity to get some enrichment there to be able to gain access to that course. Obviously, that might be a special component for this particular transition year. So speaking in general terms about a student that transitions in, let's say they come into that CP Algebra 1 course freshman year. And to your point, Mr. McDevitt, what if they start to develop that mathematical maturity a little bit, kind of by the end of that 9th grade year into 10th grade or even later? There is an opportunity in 10th grade for a student who's taking the full year geometry course to take an Algebra 2 course concurrently with that in their schedule. And as you know, students are now able to select 7 courses for their full year schedule. So there could be some more room, a little more opportunity for a student that would like to do that, to take that advantage of that opportunity. We tried to limit, or Mrs. Daly, our math department coordinator, tried to limit some of those arrows on the map But past that 10th grade year of maybe taking a couple courses concurrently, even if it's still at the CP level at that point, if that student is still driving, really making strides, really interested in the subject matter and wants to, push themselves to dig a little bit deeper, there certainly is the opportunity there, especially with conversation with family and teacher for a recommendation, to even move from that, say, CP level Algebra 2 course to push into an honors pre-calculus for the 11th grade year. So even though the arrows on our new improved map might not even show that, there certainly is opportunity there to move within pathways. And similarly for a student that may have excelled in their younger years, and now maybe because of other interests or because they're just kind of it's not as clear as it once was, they can certainly kind of go the other way with it too and move a pathway and move from an honors to a CP pathway just the same. So there still will be those opportunities embedded, and really what it comes down to is communication, communication between families and the student and the teacher, and really keeping in contact about what would be best for a student along the line that would keep them challenged, but also at not overwhelmed. So there still will be those opportunities, and I hope I was able to answer your question, but please let me know if you have any additional questions.
Person who asked.
Yep. No, you did. What'd you say? I'm sorry.
I have someone when you're done who
Oh, okay.
is ready to ask a question.
Yep. So I have another quick question for Mr. Nugent, actually. Thank you, Mrs. Randall. That was very good. So hypothetically, if I, were a high school junior and applying to college next year, I would have the luxury of the benefit of a trimester 1 grade coming out probably mid-December, which might be, valuable for me in terms of kind of showing my college readiness that would be reported out. So Mr. Nugent, how do you, are we going to post out quarterly grades for some of those students? Because if we're doing semesters, for some of these students who might be applying early to schools, that's kind of a November, December decision, and those grades I don't think would come out until January. So could you just talk a little timeline for that?
Yeah, and this is going to be a wordy answer, so I apologize in advance. So with the trimester schedule, currently our trimester 1 typically ends, say, the second week of December. And we store grades probably the week before we go on holiday break. So typically, we're sending any student who had applied to a college, we're sending those colleges automatically the trimester 1 grades for every student who applied by that point. And we call that our mid-year report. Now, this is something colleges have become accustomed to because they know we're on trimester schedules. The stickiness would be currently under the trimester, a lot of colleges are looking for the mid-year report closer to like the end of January, February, or somewhere around that. So that's more traditional. So the good news is we moved to this new schedule. We're more on a traditional trajectory or path, like all the other schools that students are applying to, applying against. We'll send out first quarter grades as a fall grade report somewhere, wherever the term ends. And then our mid-year report lines up more accurately with when all the other colleges are receiving mid-year reports from other high schools. So I think this puts us a little bit more on it. I won't say it's better, but it's more of a traditional way things would play out on a timeline for all the other students who are applying to colleges.
Okay. All right. That helps. Thank you. And I think someone joined in. So
Yes, so
yeah.
We did have Carl Vissering has raised his hand. He joined the meeting. And do you have a question, Mr. Vissering? You can unmute yourself and ask your question.
I think I'm probably on a little bit of a delay, that's all. So I was on the schools presentation, and the question I asked is what it would take to go to a 7-hour day. What that would do is make it so that classes are straight across. First period would be the same class every single day. I would guess that it would have a possibility of shortening the year. The other possibility would be that it might allow more time in school to make up for any COVID deficiencies. But I do believe going to the semester should be done as soon as possible. I wish they would have done it right along with the whole COVID mess. And I also agree with the other caller about time changes. If you're going to make any time changes, this is definitely the time to do it. There would be only one other thing that would go along with that, and it would be a whole separate issue. But when they did talk about the busing years ago, I presented some information that Harvard had published regarding cardio activity in gym and right before students' worst courses or at the beginning of the day, just to get hearts going, to get blood flowing to the brain, to increase activity. But the big question would be what it would take to do the 7-hour day.
Mr. Vissering, just to clarify, are you talking about a 7-period day?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. And thanks for the comments as well. Mr. Nugent, you want to give a little background to the committee in the team of teachers over the last couple of years that met and reviewed different types of schedules?
Yeah, Mr. Vissering, I think, I believe over the past, gosh, it's probably been close to 4 years now, we've had several different committees, groups, representation from all curriculum areas at the high school. And we looked at this, we try to slice it up as many different ways as possible. And at the end of the day, we came back to this schedule where it's, right now we're currently on 73-minute periods. If we are scheduling students for 7 classes in a term, a semester, but only having them take 6, we're going from 73 minutes to roughly 55 minutes. I think if we had 7 classes every day, that the shift again would be even less minutes than that. So I think it would be even more significant. We did a lot of math. We did a lot of looking at different things that would keep the robust offerings that we have for our related arts and electives, and obviously speak to the continuity of our curriculum and so forth. So I believe I can speak in full honesty that over the course of the last several years, we've looked at all the different options, and this is the one that we think is the best for our students right now.
When I proposed the question, I was assuming there would be an additional period extending the length of the day to a more traditional, what I've always been accustomed to, which is school ending at 3 o'clock.
Okay, thanks, Carl. Yeah, and I think it's a good point, and thanks for clarifying that as well. I think we also looked with it, knowing we're collective bargaining as well as a team there too, and extending an actual school day an extra hour would have, I think, some different impacts beyond the high school as well. So.
Well, I would assume it would only affect the high school. Yeah, I see what you're saying there. Yeah, it would affect busing and drop off and some of those things. And I would assume that, and obviously that the other callers' phased-in approach, that would be completely unworkable for the same reasons.
I'm not sure which other caller.
The public.
Oh, the public comment. That's right. Okay, sorry. Yes, thank you.
Requested a phased-in approach.
Right.
And that phased-in approach wouldn't line up with any of the other schools. So you'd have kids in the same school on 2 different schedules.
Right.
It'd be disastrous.
Right.
Yeah, and
but I would think that you could possibly do it with and even if you did it for the whole district, like I said, if you extend the length of the day, it would give more time for the kids to be in school to make up for COVID. This might be, maybe it's a 1-year deal. Try it, see if it works. If not, you go back to the schedule. But the way the schedule is, I think you lose the advantage that you have with the current waterfall, and I don't think you really gain anything back, unfortunately. except that I understand the way that it's designed. You have less interruptions at the beginning of the day and at the end of the day, but you're still going to have interruptions no matter what you do outside of school.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Vissering. And, I guess I can speak just in whole. I think our team of teachers, administrators, and going through, I think we looked at to kind of see what's the best schedule for us in the short term and long term, hopefully longer term at North Andover High School. So, I think that the presentation and the schedule we have is our best kind of going forward. But I think everyone makes good points. There's a lot of different schedules out there for a lot of different people's needs and wants as well. So we highly respect that those that come through and have come through throughout the process.
Thank you, Mr. Vissering. Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Are there any other questions for our group? Very good. Would you be comfortable for me to?
There's no other public.
There's no other public.
Okay, so if we're done with this, then we have to have a motion to close.
To close,
the
exactly. That's why
hearing.
I'm waiting to make sure you're all comfortable with that.
Okay, so that's why I think we were all
Yep.
pausing and looking around at
Yes,
each other. You
so-
guys okay? No
Yes.
question?
Okay.
Okay, all right. So I will, let me flip back to the thing here. That's the beginning. I will move to close the public hearing regarding the proposed high school semester schedule change.
Second.
So motion by Mr. McDevitt and second by Ms. Vitsky. Could we have a roll call vote? Ms. Vitsky?
Yes.
Ms. Petrowski?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Thank you all. So we will close this public hearing screen and go back to our other meeting. Just give us a second. All right.
Magically, they're all there.
Yeah, so North Andover camera, we're good to go. Excellent, thank you. So now we're back in our regular session. And I think if we want to continue, colleagues, to discuss if we have any other questions or any other discussion we want to have on this proposed change, or if you want to move into any kind of approval. Do you have anything to add, Ms. Vitsky?
No, I think it's great, like I said last time.
Right.
It's a welcome change back to it.
Ms. Petrowski?
No questions.
Okay. Mr. McDevitt, would you like to ask any others?
I think I've exhausted most of mine, so.
And I do not have any questions, as Mr. Jackson said. I just looked at Ms. Randall. Mr. Jackson said I did attend the two other meetings plus our presentation, and so I've asked a lot of questions in those, so thank you. Then I would entertain a motion to support this agenda, the schedule change.
So moved.
I'll second that.
Motion by Ms. Vitsky and second by Mr. McDevitt. Any other discussion? And we will have a roll call vote for Ms. Vitsky,
Yes.
Ms. Petrowski,
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt,
Yes.
and I vote yes. So thank you very much, North Andover High School and team.
All right. Can anyone hear?
Yes.
Can you hear us?
No.
Did you guys just hear, Ms. Marks and Ms. Pacuzzi, what the vote that was just taken?
They can't hear us.
Could you hear us?
Now we can.
Okay.
Now you can, so let's do it again.
All right, so we'll do that again. So we had a motion by Ms. Vitsky and a second by Mr. McDevitt, is that right? To approve the move to the semester schedule for North Andover High School. And the roll call vote, Ms. Vitsky.
Yes.
Ms. Petrowski.
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt.
Yes.
And I vote yes, Ms. Mably. So thank you.
So congratulations to the folks on all their hard work. Really outstanding job, with very thorough presentation, and I'm sure you'll be sending out, more communications about what it looks like. So thank you,
Yes,
Mr.
we will.
Nugent and team, and Mr. Jackson and team.
Thank you very much. We're excited about moving forward, and thanks to all the community members and our students who were part of the process. We truly appreciate it.
Thank you all very much. You really put together an excellent bunch of information and a really, really thorough process, so we appreciate that. It was well done. Thank you very much. And you're welcome to stay or you're welcome to leave. And then next we are moving on to the second reading and approval of the revolving accounts budget for '22.
So just a reminder, we're just asking to approve the amounts from last year. We have some adjustments that will need to be made as we get an understanding of what's happened this year and what will it look like next year. And we'll be coming back for some amendments to those amounts. But for right now, it just makes sense to approve them, continuing the same amounts from last year.
I think the important thing to note that's in our packets, but we're not looking for any fee modifications for our programs as well, so.
Yeah, so just so everybody knows, the community programs has really taken a hit this year. I don't want to bury the lead. Correct, Mr. McDevitt. We are not looking to change any of our fees for next year. But I do think you need to understand overall, in a normal year, community programs does very well, but it's been taking a hit because it hasn't been really generating revenue. On the flip side, food services, which usually runs just enough to cover expenses, because of all the meals it's been able to deliver in getting the federal reimbursements for those meals, is doing very well. So it's had the opportunity to actually build up to an amount that is what we like to have in reserves for a enterprise fund. So just kind of catching you up.
Well, that's very helpful. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Mealy, Dr. Mealy?
Nope.
Nope. Excellent. So I'd entertain a motion to approve the revolving account budget plan for '22.
So moved.
Second. Motion by Ms. Vitsky, a second by Ms. Petrowski. Any other conversation? I believe not. So we will say Ms. Vitsky.
Yes.
Ms. Petrowski. Yes. Mr. McDevitt.
Yes.
And I vote yes. Thank you. And now we are moving on to new business, which is a presentation of this from the School Capacity Subcommittee that's been working very, very hard. We look forward to this presentation.
So we have the whole team here. You met them earlier. And officially, we are the North Andover School Department School Capacity Planning Subcommittee. And tonight we're talking about the options, the work that's gone into creating the options, identifying those options, and possibly identifying others as we move forward. But just catching everybody up to the work that's been done so far and what to expect in the near future regarding the renovations and restructuring of some of our schools that will be part of Facilities Master Plan Phase 2. So for those who don't know, we are about to begin for the next town meeting and the meeting after that, the Facilities Master Plan Phase 2. And Phase 1 had some school projects, but the focus was on some town projects that needed to get done, with the understanding that Phase 2 would have an emphasis on school projects. And so we are preparing our recommendations for what those should be. And the school focus includes renovating our older schools, which includes the middle school, Franklin, Atkinson, and Kittredge. Providing needed support spaces for 21st century learners at our schools, because what's happened over the past few years and a couple of decades is that demands for space have increased, and we just haven't been able to accommodate that without giving up classrooms. And so while you can count the classrooms in a building, that doesn't mean that they're being used for classrooms. And it makes it difficult to manage class size, which is the next bullet, impacting class size. So it really limits our ability to get to that desired around 20 at the elementary level per class. And at the same time, we need to build capacity for future growth. We've all heard about developments that are coming on and just that annual growth that occurs in town. And lastly, we need to eliminate portable classrooms, which have been here for a lot longer than anyone anticipated, and it's definitely time for them to go. The school renovations, as I said, and possible additions would be Atkinson, Franklin, Kittredge, and the North Andover Middle School. The subcommittee members you've met, Holly Vitsky Lynch is a school committee member and the chair of the subcommittee. Laurie Aria is a Sargent district parent. Chrissy Harricull is an Atkinson district parent. Bill Hart from the Thompson district. Stan Limpert, former school committee member and school building committee member. Michael Liss, Franklin district parent. Christy Martin, Kittredge district parent. And myself representing school administration. So our mission has been to review the space study commissioned by the superintendent and town manager. A group, Mount Vernon group, came in preparation for Facilities Master Plan Phase 2 and looked at the 4 schools in question. They did a thorough analysis of the building envelope and the mechanical systems and the roofs and all, and provided an assessment. And then they also identified some possible options to begin with, which we have built on and will continue to build on, of what we might do. Because it's not just renovating and adding, it's while we're doing this, we might as well see what makes the most sense educationally. So do we want to make some changes to how we're doing things? Now would be the time, as people have been mentioning tonight. And so we want to develop these options, engage the public to gather input, vet these, and then respond to the plans. The subcommittee will bring its recommendations to the school committee by June of this year. So the tasks include identifying the key aspects of the school projects and conducting research on these, identifying the possible options and analyzing the pros and cons, involving the community as much as possible along the way. And it's interesting to say that because we've been working since December, and this is the first presentation. But we've done that purposely because we wanted to avoid the rumor mill as much as possible. And as we discuss, some crazy ideas, just so that we know we've considered them, we don't want people thinking that is is something that's going to happen. And it's already, I've heard out in the public that we're building a new middle school, or Atkinson's going to be the middle school. Now, that's one of the options, but it certainly has no greater weight than any other option, but it's already out there. And so we wanted to wait until this presentation to make all of the information available to everybody, and we're going to provide it all on the webpage and through social media and in other means. So you'll have it all, but we just wanted to wait until we were ready to present as clearly as we could. And the other thing that's really important to us is avoiding getting to the end of this and having somebody stand up and say, have you thought of this? And we say, no, we hadn't thought of that. So we want to make sure we vet this out in the public, out in the community as much as possible, and give people the opportunity to say, well, what about this? So that we can give it its due consideration and get to the end and not have any concerns about how did you miss that, or why hadn't you thought of that? And so we're going to try to do that and identify all the options that are possible. And then we're going to present them, get some community input, and then make recommendations to the school committee based on that community input. So how are we doing that? We're identifying and evaluating the possible options for renovating and or restructuring. I'm going to present our findings. First, we're going to identify the different aspects of the projects, such as grade distribution, location, and among other things. Review the prior year's enrollment projections, review enrollment data, and update enrollment projections. Review space capacity studies that have been done in the past and kind of vet those and update them. Create a web page for community access to our meeting notes, our data, our research, and the reports that we have from historical reports and the one we generate. And then using multiple platforms, including social media, to get information to the community. Very important, solicit community feedback specific to the various aspects of the projects and options. That's going to be done through a survey and public hearings. Identify all the possible options, conduct the pros and cons analysis, provide cost estimates, obviously a critical aspect, and then generate the final report and recommendations for the school committee and community. You're going to hear in the next few slides from the members of our subcommittee, starting with Laurie Aria.
Hello.
So Laurie,
Jim,
you're going to talk to them
aren't I
about...
starting on the next slide?
Oh, I'm sorry. I got there one
Sorry.
too soon. Sorry about that. So yes, the
It's okay.
subcommittee timeline. We've been meeting twice a month since December. We have been making the meeting agenda and notes available. The meetings have been public, and we have had some people who have attended those. We're doing this presentation tonight, and then following this meeting on Monday, our webpage will go live. Actually, this presentation will be available on the school website tomorrow and on the webpage when it goes live on Monday. The survey, we have our next meeting on April 7th, and shortly after that, the survey will be going out. And then public hearings and community input during the month of May, with the goal of a final report to school committee in June. And now, we hear from Lori.
Thank you. So the first thing, pros and cons of traditional middle school, junior high school, upper and lower middle schools. So the traditional middle school is the 5 through 8, junior high is 7, 8, upper would be 7, 8, and a lower would be 5, 6. Secondly, pros and cons of sixth grade as part of middle school or elementary school. So this would be taking the sixth graders out of the middle school and putting them back into the elementary school. So elementary school would become grades 1 through 6. And we spoke about the social, emotional advantages to both of those. Pros and cons of smaller class sizes. Obviously, there are more pros to that, more focus on learning, better for teachers and students. The only con really would be cost. It would be more expensive to do that. Equity between elementary schools. So this is just making sure that the things offered in the different elementary schools are consistent in terms of spaces, gyms, art rooms, things like that. So neighborhood schools and grade-based schools. Neighborhood schools is our current elementary school model. And grade-based schools would be the middle school, so with 6, 7, 8. Classrooms and educational space for the 21st century learner. I think we made a lot of progress in this year because of Zoom and remote learning, and we upgraded the internet and all the kids got Chromebooks. So while we were kind of forced into that, I think that was an advantage of COVID. And then phasing construction for school projects so that it's not as disruptive to students and teachers and staff while they have to redo those buildings.
Thank you, Lori. And now we're going to hear from Mike Liss regarding enrollment.
Yeah, so as Dr. Mealy pointed out earlier, we've been looking through a lot of enrollment data, so including actual enrollment data starting in the 1990s all the way up through now. Past enrollment projections. So we've had a few other occasions since 1990 where we have asked, consultants to look at what they thought the town's projected school growth was, and see how those align with what actually happened. It's one of those occasions where you can see how those predictions turned out. And I would say, as a general rule, the more extreme the predictions were in terms of growth, the further off they were from reality. And on the next slide in a moment, you'll see why. And then going over a recent enrollment projection that has been used to look at the recent developments that are currently being permitted, and also the proposed Royal Crest development, and walking through all the methodology on those. And yeah, and like I said, really trying to understand what those projections mean and what we can expect from them. So, Dr. Mealy, next slide. So we've had really very, very steady growth of our school system since the mid-90s. It's been, on average, about 35 students a year. Most recently, the last few years, we've actually had a drop in student enrollment. And that's been exacerbated by COVID, but it didn't really start with COVID. The peak was, I believe, 2017, and it's 2018 and 2019 were lower than this year. Were lower than the previous years. And looking at the data, you can see that it's students, basically larger cohorts graduating than the cohorts that are entering. And so it's not students dropping out through the middle of the school year, but it's that there's fewer young kids coming in at the beginning of the system than there are older kids graduating at the end of it. Now that's certainly expected to bounce back somewhat post-COVID as some students who sat out this year return. And then going forward, the projections are based off of expected single-family house developments and expected multifamily housing developments. And this trend line, this orange trend line that is here, that would bring us up to 48 students a year, should be viewed as something of an upper bound. In particular, it assumes that for the Royal Crest development, that all students who currently live in Royal Crest would be living, either housed somewhere else in North Andover or otherwise covered still by the North Andover school system. And then that would be in addition to the expected students that would come in from Royal Crest. But even with that as an upper bound, you can see that basically by 2030, we would be expected to return to the trend line that we had before. And so I think the overall theme you can look at with this is to expect steady growth of our school system, that we're not spiking, but we're also probably not going to remain on a decreasing slope like we have been in the last few years. All right, that's all I've got.
Thank you, Michael. Next up, we're going to have space capacity from Stan Lippert.
Thank you, Jim. So we went back and looked at prior studies that had been done for to try to answer the same question, what are the capacity of the students? And thanks to Diane Huster, a former school committee member, we were able to get studies that, as Michael mentioned, went back to really 1988 and look at what they had seen. You won't be surprised to hear that they've been seeing the same thing over the years that we're seeing now, which is the need for more school capacity, both in terms of classrooms and in terms of other spaces. There was a study done in 2007, which also took a look at all our schools. And at that time, as you know, the kindergartens had been moved back into the elementary schools. So there was a real space crunch at that point. That crunch was relieved when we opened the kindergarten, our kindergarten facility 2 years ago. So we now have a little bit of a breathing room in the elementary schools, but not enough to handle growth, and certainly not enough to handle the additional needs that Dr. Mealy was talking about for 21st century education. Next slide, Jim. So what we're doing for each of the 3 elementary schools, Franklin, Atkinson, and Kittredge, is really trying to do a complete inventory of their current capabilities and what their needs are. And this is just an example of what that might look like, both in terms of classrooms and then in terms of all the other spaces that that we think are appropriate and needed for schools, like for all of our schools for 21st century education, and to make sure that we are providing equity across all our elementary schools. Next slide, please, Jim. So what we're going to be doing to sort of provide the information here is to look at the capacity required to, as Lori mentioned, to reduce class size, also to provide for the growth that Mike talked about, and also to help look for what the needs are for spaces for activities other than classroom teaching, and translate that into what we need to provide to the facilities master plan 2 group for the size of the schools that we feel are going to be needed to meet the needs.
Thank you very much, Stan. And Bill Hart's going to talk about community communication.
So we're going to try to maximize on a lot of the platforms that are already in place and being used by the school department for various different presentations. So one would be the use of CAM and YouTube to create a brief video presentation with the talking over of a slideshow. The survey that we talked about earlier that we're preparing, and trying to time out for hopefully a launch sometime in April, probably coinciding a little bit after that April 5th roll-in of schools, when people will be a little more open to survey taking again. Social media is a big one. Again, platforms that are there for us through Twitter and Facebook to access community feedback. The webpage that we talked about, which is preparing for a launch on Monday to go live, will be kind of the holding place for a lot of the information for people to revisit. And then finally, public hearings such as school committee and town meetings will be another access. Again, we're looking to solicit input, not only from stakeholders that are already in the school community, but really the community at large, families of younger children that haven't quite gotten into the school system yet, as well as families that have recent graduates that will have, feedback for the committee. So really valuing stakeholders across the board in the community.
Great, thank you, Bill. Chrissy Harricle and Christy Martin are going to talk about the webpage. And do you want me to put the webpage up first or wait until you go through the bullet points?
You can go ahead and put it up, Jim.
Okay.
So we built the framework for a public-facing webpage. It is going to be fleshed out with some more content. So again, this is just kind of the bones of it. There are links to all the relevant information for the committee as far as our meeting agendas and minutes and the timeline since December. It is going to show our research since December, which is going to include needs assessment, enrollment data, grade configuration possibilities, and the proposed models, as well as tonight's presentation. And what we're going to do is give some context to each of them so the public understands why the needs assessment studies were done, what the enrollment data is about, definitely fleshing out grade configuration possibilities, because probably the average public isn't familiar with that term or what it means in the context of the models that we are proposing. We will also include a way to provide feedback via a Google form for the public, and there'll be a link to the survey when it goes live. So I think that's it, Jim.
Okay, great. And then Holly.
Yep, so my slide's going to be kind of repetitive. We've already covered, I think, all of this. But we're soliciting community feedback in several ways. These have been mentioned earlier in the presentation, but open meetings, which, similar to when the school committee did the tour for the ABECC, we're going to do something similar to that and go to PTO meetings at the various schools, library, right now virtually, of course. But inviting the public to come and ask questions that way. Everybody's already talked about the survey that will be going out. The links, I believe that's the webpage, right?
Correct.
So the webpage that has been designed. The presentation tonight, we're hoping people watch this and ask questions and give us feedback after this. And then similar to the public hearing we had earlier tonight for the high school schedule, we will be having a public hearing for this as well.
Thank you. And then just a quick sneak peek of the survey. We're asking the school committee, not necessarily right now, but to take a look at this and give us some feedback prior to our meeting on the 7th. If you could send me any feedback you have regarding this, that would be helpful as we finalize it. But what we try to do is just introduce the subject to everyone and then ask them questions about their status. Bill was talking about, not just those who have children in the schools now, but maybe will have them or have had them or have never had them, which district they're in, and then talking about the different aspects we mentioned and how they feel, whether they're important or not important. That's going to be really key to us in deciding the validity of the options based on how people feel about these different aspects. So that's that.
How will you get us a draft of that for our feedback? Will you email it to us?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So
we're finalizing that at our next meeting, right?
What's that?
We're finalizing that at our next
Correct.
meeting, right?
On April 7th.
Yep.
Yep. So this is just an example, and I can't say it enough, this is just an example.
Jim, maybe you could say that 3 times.
Yep, one more time.
Construction.
Yeah, it's funny. Will that road impact the playground? So this is Franklin, and this is what the Mount Vernon group did as if we were just moving ahead with we're going to renovate 3 elementary schools in the middle school, and we're going to add to those to increase capacity. So they did an initial what that would look like, but like I said, we wanted to make sure we considered all options, and so this was just an example of one what it might look like. So I want to just show that. In this case at Franklin, the blue is the existing, the orange would be the addition, so you'd be adding capacity in the form of classrooms and support rooms. You'd be renovating the blue, and then that orange rectangle in the upper corner of the building is the gym that Franklin has always desperately needed. The current gym is tiny for that school and would be repurposed, but that's what it might look like, just as an example. So what I want to do now is talk about some of the options that we've come up with so far, and we'll be looking for input from the community about how they feel about these and what are some other possibilities we might not have considered yet. So when you do look at the options, and as I go through them, I'm going to go through them a little quickly. You can look at this at your leisure, especially the pros and cons, but when you do look at it, here's what you're seeing. The rectangles represent the schools. The North Andover High School, we don't anticipate anything with that. It's going to stay 9 through 12. You can see the grade configuration on the right, 9 to 12 for high school. Currently, NAMS is 6 to 8, and that one is a bold border because that's one of the schools being considered for renovation/additions, as are Atkinson, Franklin, and Kittredge. And then a double box is, we didn't want to have too many options. Like, we could have 20 options because there were variations of each one. Mm-hmm. So for instance, one of the variations is that one of the elementary schools is not worth renovating. It doesn't cost much more to build a new one, so that might be a variation on the option. It's not renovate, but to build new. So that's why you see the double box on that one. So that's what you're seeing when you look at the different options. So option 1 is just as we've been talking about. It's middle school, Atkinson, Franklin, and Kittredge get renovated, and they have additions put on them so that we increase capacity. The grade configurations stay the same, 9 to 12, 6 to 8, and 1 to 5 for elementary. Pros and cons you can see, and as I said, you can look at these on your own. I'll just highlight, for option 1, that means not a lot of change. And, while some people love change, there's plenty of people who don't like change. And so that would be attracted to them. It's the closest to the status quo. It doesn't impact transportation. It doesn't change a lot. Whereas the cons are, it's difficult to expand later. It maintains as Dr. Gilligan has reminded us many, many times, Dr. Gilligan, about our middle school.
About the middle school?
What size? The size of our middle school.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we have the highest class size, and believe it or not, North Andover Middle School is 67 years old. So it's incredible.
And it's one of the largest middle schools in the area. And so also, the last thing I'll highlight, Kittredge. Kittredge, as you know, is limited in its size and in what you can do to it. We've already added 4 classrooms through modular construction, and the site isn't necessarily conducive to adding on to the existing building.
Is that because of the way the landing is?
Not necessarily. It's more about where you might go to try to continue the existing. Okay. One of the other options is the variation is to build new, and so the talk was that you could possibly build new on the other side of the gym. You have a brand new gym. Let's use that. But so it's not necessarily the hill, according to the architects. It's just how to continue. The flow would be very difficult to try to do more with what we have. Okay. So option 2 would be to utilize the existing buildings, but create an upper and lower middle school. The current middle school would be 7 and 8, and the Atkinson building could be repurposed to the lower middle school of grades 5 and 6. And then the remaining 4 elementary schools would, the Kittredge and Franklin would have to be renovated and expanded, and then you'd have the 1st through 4th grades at those elementary schools. Again, just highlighting a couple pros and cons. You have better collaboration between 5th and 6th grade teachers and 7th and 8th, but you have more transitions, and the vertical collaboration may be a little more difficult in that model. And the other benefit being that you start getting students district-wide 1 grade earlier than we do now. Option 3, again, it's similar to option 2, with the difference being instead of the lower middle school being 5th and 6th, it would be 6th grade only. And 1 through 5 would remain elementary. So you'd have to expand more of the elementary than you would if you were only accommodating 4 grades in that one. And so that's a con on that one. But this one of the discussions we really focused on is the 6th grade and where is the best place for 6th grade. It's a very important grade, obviously. And is it better remaining in the middle school? Is it better being part of the elementary school? And the mentor and mentoring capabilities there. But another option is to have it by itself. Again, that's a little different. You don't see that very often, but we want to, again, consider all options, so that's why it's there. Option 4, this one is instead of having an upper and lower middle school, we continue with middle school of 6 through 8, but we build a new middle school. And we continue with the 5 existing elementary schools. The main con on that one, I'll just say, is that you could open yourself up to, we struggle, and we're always striving for equity among our elementary schools, but now if you have 2 middle schools, you're dealing with the same issues of trying to make sure that the 2 are equal and don't start to have any disparities between the 2. And option 5, this one is the most expanded version, which is an upper and lower middle school and an upper and lower elementary. So this is when we were talking about the grade distribution versus neighborhood schools. This is that the schools are based on the grades of the students instead of the location or where they live. And so you'd have 1st and 2nd grade at 2 of the elementary schools, and then 3rd and 4th grade at the other 2 elementary schools. And then 5th and 6th would be lower middle school, and 7th and 8th would be upper middle school. Obviously, there are the pros on this are that you've got the ability for teachers to collaborate much easier. It's kind of like the benefit to the kindergarten being all in one place, but you've got a lot more transitions, and vertical collaboration is more of a challenge. And then the last one, again, not necessarily the last one, because there could be other options that are brought forward and brought to our attention that would be worth considering. But this one is the middle school is 7 and 8, and 6th grade is moved back to elementary. So in this case, you'd have to expand the elementary schools more than you had anticipated, and the middle school would not have to have any additions. It would actually be large enough, certainly, to handle 2 grades, and there might be some excess capacity there in that case. So those are pros and cons on that one. So the next steps, as we said, we'll share the survey with you guys, get your input, and we'll finalize that on April 7th and get it out to the public. And the public hearings will hold in May, although when I say we'll, it's one of the discussions that we'd like to have tonight is what are the expectations of the school committee? One of the things we've struggled with is we don't want to be presumptuous as a subcommittee and eliminate options that maybe you thought were worth considering. And so we just need direction in what do you want from us in the final report? Do you want us, based on the survey results and the public hearings, to report to you that these options don't seem viable based on the public input and the research that we've done, and these do? Or do you want to be the ones holding the public hearings and having these discussions So we just need that direction because the timeline has shortened from what we originally thought. Spoke to the town manager. They would like to have a recommendation from the school committee by September of 21, so that can go to the Facilities Master Plan Committee and have them ready to go for town meeting for May of 2022. So our report will be done by June. We'll be willing to conduct the public hearings during the month of May, and then the school committee can have a public hearing or two based on the final report, and then make a recommendation coming out of the summer break in September. And then it would be voted on at town meeting in May of 22. Questions?
Like option 7.
Which is?
So, would anybody like to ask their first questions? Mr. McDevitt got to talk a lot before, so I'll start on this side of the room.
You don't have to ask me.
Yeah, sorry. Pam, do you have any? I know this is, we're all just getting this right now. This is a first blush, so nobody's expecting any answers, but do you have any questions or?
I just wanted actually some clarification on the space capacity analysis template. So we're looking at the current and is it 1950, like the when the schools were built, like I'm confused about.
No, so when we're looking at current, so right now, for instance, in this example, this is none of our schools, but you might have a reading room, you have a kitchen, a cafeteria, you have a gym, you have a library, you might have 2 special education programs, but you really have 3, so you need space for 3, but you only have space for 2. You have a resource room, but you don't have a room for a social worker. You don't have a teacher's workroom. You don't have music or art. They're on a cart in this example, and that would be the current. Whereas what we have planned is if we had an art room, a music room, so you see what the plan would look like, and that's an additional 10 rooms necessary, or 22,300 additional square feet in the building, and it would be the capacity that we would need, depending on which option we do, obviously, would determine the planned capacity.
Okay, so this is being used to determine like what the school potential new spaces would look like. So then, do we not need like a technology room because everything's on a cart now, or like a space for that? And then, as an EL teacher, I'm going to notice that there's no EL space designated on here.
You're absolutely right.
So it was so funny. I was thinking this, like, the kids were just built 71 years ago, and people weren't thinking about OT and PT and EL and Title I services and STEM areas. And, you know, those are the issues you run into. So I think, you know, one of the things I've been thinking about, because I think about equity and access all the time. When people have been saying 21st century, buildings, I see it as encompassing all of that. And I think that's what you guys were trying to capture.
Yeah, so this form here isn't even, this is a sample,
Okay.
but it's not the full list of all the rooms.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I just want to make sure that they're all being accounted for, because I know it's hard for those kind of pull-out services and other pull-out services to find space. So if there's a designated space, that alleviates a lot for everybody.
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. McDevitt?
Just a couple of quick thoughts. One, to the subcommittee, obviously extremely difficult to meet, virtually, but, on some hands, it might have been easier to kind of get into a meeting because of the ability to zoom in. But great work, great job in kind of pulling all of this stuff together. Thank you so much for giving up, I'm sure, many nights and many hours to kind of pour through information and to get things together. So this is great. I really, when I saw this earlier today, started to look through them and had a ton of questions about them, the pros and the cons for each of them. I was able to tick off a ton of I don't know where the camera is here, but a ton of questions that I had based upon you guys taking the time to identify them out. So I really appreciate the effort that went into all of that. I think a couple of things that I just want to point out for this. and Dr. Gilligan, correct me if I'm wrong, but, we haven't, we built the ABECC, about 2 years ago?
2.5 years
Open
old now.
2.5 years
We're
ago.
coming up on 3.
Coming up on 3. But prior to that, we hadn't built a school, for 20-plus years.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting, as someone who's worked in the district 23 years, I think of the older schools and the newer schools.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking to myself, Sargent School, that's a brand new school. In my mind,
Yeah.
I kind of think that, but it's 25 years old.
Yeah.
Thompson, which opened in 1924, and was rebuilt in 99, it's 22 years old. The high school is 17 years old. So when I think of the new schools, they're actually a lot older than we think.
Yeah.
And so.
Yeah. So my point is, we have some very old schools in our district, and we've taken some time to put the portable classrooms on and gyms and things of that nature in order to do that. But the clock is coming, and the clock is ticking now very loudly, that significant investment has to be made in moving us forward into new schools, new spaces for our students. So I think all of this is very well timed. A couple of thoughts that I had just on this, I think Pam mentioned, the template that was out there for each of them. I'd love to see us complete one for each of the schools in terms of what we have, what we don't have. It's important, I think, to see what some of the deficiencies are that are there. A couple of the options that are here, I don't remember exactly which one it was. I lost I think it was 5, with multiple grade levels at different elementary schools. I mean, the thing that I thought about that, and, when we opened the ABECC was, people worrying about the transitions that students have. And I just look at that and I think, like, every 2 years we've got transitions, and I worry about how students adapt to things of that nature, and then really some logistics and, transportation and car pickups for parents who, have to shuffle off to an activity and, might be hitting 3-4 different schools, and what those pickup lines look like. So I think that's, important considerations that are there. We may have a very crowded middle school, but I think one of the things that students like is that transition from their elementary schools into that kind of unit of North Andover is done once at that middle school, where they really start to merge together. They're still in their teams, but they're starting that cross mingling and meeting each other, and that continues on. I mean, my sons, are meeting kids that they've never met, and they're, in high school, and I say, you went to middle school with these, how do you not know them? And they're still just meeting new kids, which is great. But I like the concept of the single kind of middle school that's there. I think that's an important part of North Andover. And if it's not one school, I think I'm sort of heard maybe a middle school campus, if you will. There's a potential that's out there. I think it's really important, too. We have an amazing youth center, and so much of what happens for the learning for our students is also what's happening kind of after school as well. And so their ability to kind of walk down and utilize the youth center, I think, is a really important thing to kind of keep into consideration. The one thing that I didn't necessarily see here, but may come up at some point is, and I don't know how many acres it is, but we own land out on Foster Farm. And so there is...
It's come up.
Yeah, it's not here. I'm sure it's come up. Yeah, I know Stan's there.
I can check with Stan Limpert. I think that if Stan doesn't know, Diane will.
Yeah. No, we still own it. It's still a town asset, right?
Yep. So I think, that's something that I think a lot of people are going to ask about. I think, we're probably going to catch a lot of attention of newer families and families of or younger students who may not know the history of Foster Farm, and that we actually have the land there as well. So, that's an interesting twist to kind of put out there as well. So I think that there's tons of great options that are there. There's there's amazing people in this community who are going to look at things and come up with amazing suggestions. And I think, even the 6 that are here, we're going to come up with another 6, in our inboxes pretty quickly of, hey, what about this? And the answer is out there. It's absolutely out there. It could be here. But, we really need some public support. We need some public advice and some thoughts on this because this is going to impact. I mean, if we think about how often we build a new school, I mean, if our last couple schools were 20, 25 years ago, and then we go 60, 70 years, no pressure, but, this is a legacy that is going to be out there for long after, well, maybe long after we're gone. I don't know. So,
I'd agree with you, Mr. McDevitt. I think none of us are as smart as all of us together, number one. And then number two, I'm glad we're vetting this. This is some of the most important work we'll do. And these buildings, there'll be a committee here in 45 years from now, having the same discussion, and they're going to be here long after we're gone. And frankly, we need to create the best spaces for teachers to teach and kids to learn. And, there's lots of offshoots of all of these. So I'm just really impressed with the work of the committee. It's just unbelievable work in a short amount of time.
Yeah.
Can I just address a couple points that Mr. McDevitt made? I think we did say that the space capacity template was going to be used for these schools, but we're actually doing it for all the schools.
Okay.
Yeah,
great.
we have to. You also reminded me I told myself to say this while I was doing the presentation, but I forgot. For the pros and cons, I want people to understand when they're looking at those that there's no weight given. Some of those could be extremely important, some of them could be irrelevant, but we just wanted to get them all down. So people should understand that. And we know how amazing the people in North Andover are, and we're anticipating that we are going to hear from them. We want to hear from them. So whether it's adding to the pros and cons or adding to the options, whatever input you can provide will be appreciated. And then lastly, when we talked about variations, like the example of Kittredge, the variation wasn't just, we're going to rebuild Kittredge. It's that, that new school could actually be out in Foster Farms because that's land we own. So that is, as Holly was saying, a consideration, a variation. Yep.
I have one more thought, but it's a little fresh, so I won't say it. So
I'll ask my couple questions. You kind of just hit on one of them. I was going to say, I distinctly got the impression that you all advocate for Kittredge really needs to be rebuilt instead of added to, or
we're trying to avoid letting we've got 8 members, and there wouldn't be a consensus. Our job is to try to indicate to the school committee what the community wants, not what we want.
Right.
But as Dr. Gilligan was saying, and as I mentioned to Mr. McDevitt earlier, Kittredge is very limited. It's small. It's the oldest school. So if there is a candidate and the delta, initial cost estimates, the delta is not that much between renovating and adding or building new. So it's why it's one of the options.
Yep. And you just hit on the other kind of major thing that obviously is out there is, the cost of all these different options, right? I'm glad that we're not saying these are all off the table because they're too expensive. We're exploring first. But at what point do we draw that line? Because we don't want everybody we're all on board for this, sorry. And it ends up being, that's, $17 million more than we can ever entertain. So that's off the table. There's a fine line between brainstorming and getting the best ideas. And then, so I'm wondering at what point you recommend that we need to, I don't think it's now, obviously, but we need to attach dollars to some of these options.
It's a great question. We do, Mount Vernon is working on the estimates for us of the options we currently have, and they're ready for any additional options to give us cost estimates. You're absolutely right. The initial survey, we want people to be focused on the concepts of the options, but then obviously I think the next step, the next level is as we narrow down the options, we bring in the prices, so that might eliminate some as well.
Right.
But yeah, it's probably the next step.
Okay. And then you kind of touched on this already. My question was like this new middle school, like where would that be? And I'm assuming it would be the Foster Farm land, or did you have other ideas or TBD?
I think we asked, and it's the one that exists as you know, town property. I'm not sure there are any other sites the town owns that would accommodate another school.
Okay, so I was just curious about that. And then, I mean, there are a lot, the whole idea of like that kind of like middle school campus thing is interesting, and I didn't think of the youth center link to it, but that's a really good point there as well. And I guess when I looked at this briefly this afternoon, what I kept thinking of is for all of us in the community and beyond, it's going to be really important, I think, to almost to not just look at it emotionally and react with our emotions to, oh my gosh, like my kids were Thompson kids, they walked to school, it was perfect. Don't break that up, but try to really be objective about what is best for education in North Andover and then apply the emotional part. I think that's going to be the hardest element for all of us, but I think it's critical because we are not just doing this for our generation, it's for a very long time down the road. And I moved here 22 years ago, about 5 minutes before the new Thompson School opened, so it is old now. It's not, it's great. So this is a lot to take on. Will you have the charts that we've all talked about on this website when the website goes live, or they'll be added as you build them, these analysis things?
Yeah, as they get completed, they're going to be added.
Added
So
to
we'll
that
be
website,
constantly
okay.
adding information. I mean, we have historical reports we're going to start with. There's base capacity reports that have been done, the enrollment projection reports that have been done, our current enrollment projections that have recently been done. At the meeting notes, obviously, and in the research that we've done on the different aspects. And then the survey will be there, and the survey results will be public. So, and then we'll be adding everything else as we go.
Right,
Mhm.
okay. So you asked us a big question kind of at the end of your presentation, which was like, what are the next steps that we feel we'd like you as a subcommittee to take on? I think that's something we need to discuss, and you kind of have to jump on this side, Holly, to discuss that, I think. What are the next steps? Obviously, the website and these community engagement meetings that you're all going to be conducting. But September 21, with all the other stuff that's going on, is very soon.
Mhm.
So,
I
as
will
much
just
as I
say-
think we need to digest some of this,
Yeah, I will just say that
we need to come up with
we've
some
had the
suggestions.
discussion as a group, and have gone back and forth about it. But we're certainly prepared to continue and to conduct not only the survey and report out those results, but conduct public hearings and other community input forums. And if that might generate some other options, and the pros and cons can increase. And then if the committee would like us, we can, based on that community input, and in the report, we would explain why certain options were eliminated because of how the community felt, and then present the school committee with some amount of options that the community could support, and at what level they could support each option.
So I can put an idea out there if that's all right. I know when we did the kindergarten, the Ann Bradstreet kind of roadshow building up to that, I was brand new in the committee, and I went to like 16 of the 18 of those just because I was curious. I think whatever you all put together, we would probably want some of us to attend various ones. Right. I know we can't have more than 2 of us because of open meeting law, et cetera, but I think that as much as we can participate in what you're doing just as listeners, I think that would be maybe something that we should consider pursuing. What do you guys think about that?
No, I agree. I mean, I think if we're going to have public forums and hearings on that topic, we should probably have a schedule.
Yep.
So we're not accidentally kind of dropping in. One question that kind of came up, and it's not necessarily really for the subcommittee per se, but perhaps maybe for you, Dr. Mealy, we've been applying, I don't know, 4 or 5 years now for the middle school for state building funds.
MSBA?
Yeah, and we've been denied every time, right? So, I mean, the likelihood coming out of COVID that there's going to be a really massive school building fund is I don't know, I'm going to say slim. So, you know, I think we're looking at doing this 100% kind of on the town side from a funding perspective. Would that be an accurate?
I think it's a realistic answer in
Okay.
that as you said, the likelihood that we are going to get approved now when we haven't been is probably slim is a good word. So the likelihood is that we will have to be funding this, yes.
Would that slow down the process too, though, if you, like, because
So you mean the MSBA aspect
Yeah.
of it? It could.
I mean, not that that should be the deterrent, but.
Yeah.
It often takes 7 or 8 tries to get into the queue in the MSBA, and, you know, right now they're backed up, so they've been way backed up. I think one
I
of
don't
the
think we want to wait 7 or 8 years.
No, of course. And that's why I think that we've worked really hard to work with the town management, terrific, working with her because we had 3 schools kind of in the Facilities Master Plan 2 before she took over. And then with that transition, that really slowed things down between the 2 town managers. But it was really awesome for her then to put the middle school into the Facilities Master Plan 2. That was a big step, and I'm very appreciative of it.
And she did it for exactly the reason that you just said,
Yeah.
because she realized that as well.
Yeah, I think I'm just thinking back on the 6 options that are out there, and I mean, honestly, the creativity that's there is just really impressive. I mean, there were things that popped out that, I mean, I don't know who thought of it, or if it was, you know, everybody kind of drawing and like, yeah, that'll work. But, you know, there's some really creative things that are out there, and they all have some really good considerations. I'm pretty impressed so far. This is good.
I just want to add to what Mr. McDevitt said earlier and Dr. Mealy has said in previous meetings and Dr. Gillian said tonight, that this committee has been working super hard. I'm really proud of them. We're meeting until 10 o'clock at night, and the work that goes on in between meetings is impressive too. And I can tell you, Christy Martin, for example, already has a plan on how to roll out to get community feedback at all the school levels.
That's excellent.
They're ready to go. So you just give us the marching orders and we'll do it.
One group that maybe isn't here is middle school parent. And
I'm the middle school parent.
You're the middle school. Okay, all right. So you're double dipping, and
Yep.
I think I might have seen somebody else there that had a
Yep.
middle schooler as well. But okay, all right. I wanted to make sure that they were somewhat represented too. So okay.
No, I think you all are, like you said, working so hard and knee deep in all of this. I feel like we would like to fit into the plans that that's my take, the plans that you all are putting forth to gather the input that we need, because it is a tight window here, so.
Yeah, I'm going to ask one more kind of random question, and it was a little bit of the fresh comment I was going to make earlier, but so 3 years ago, we transferred back to the town, the fields behind the middle school and the Atkinson. And there's been a field committee, there's been a proposal that's been put out, that's been stalled right now. I'll kind of leave it at that. Does that conceivably change some of the options that could be out there?
I would just speak a little bit personally from my experience of, you know, my first few days on the job with the Ann Bradstreet opening up, with the site work not done for a couple months around the building, but we had to get kids in school, and then we had the gas explosions, and I've thought about that a lot, and I think about that complex. And I think one of the challenges with that land, you know, it's town land, it's a terrific project that would benefit the whole community, including the schools, and it would really make, I mean, when it's done, it's going to be awesome. You know, I think one of the challenges there that you think about right now is that we're already talking about, on that campus now, there's about 2,200 kids.
Yeah.
You know, and so.
And across the street, another.
Yeah, I don't even count the Kittredge, but if you know, just say the middle school's 1,100, you know, you have 505 at the Bradstreet, you know, what the population, over 350, you know, at the Atkinson off the top of my head. You know, you add all that up, that's a lot of cars, it's a lot of transportation, it's a lot of logistics. So I think it could be very challenging to pack something in there. But it is, I mean, if you think about North Andover, the one interesting part about it is, you know, if you drew a circle around all of our schools, they're probably within 2 miles of each other with the exception of Sargent. I mean, you can walk to all the schools around here pretty quickly. So,
And just another aspect of that, Mr. McDevitt, is that it's interesting, two separate architects, when asked about if we have to add to the existing middle school, never even thought, whether they knew or not that those, that was town land. Both suggested that the courtyard would be ideal for adding classrooms instead of going around the envelope. And both, and the assessments that were done of the buildings, the middle school and Atkinson, are structurally sound, and so don't need to be replaced. Adding another building when you don't need to remove those doesn't make a lot of sense.
Gotcha.
Yep.
and it's gonna be a project that benefits the whole community.
Right. So I have another major thing that maybe you all have discussed already, but I want to put out there, and actually Eamon brought it up in his public comment that he sent in. All these different configurations, and I think somebody brought it up, there's the busing, the transportation challenges of the different scenarios. I would encourage that we consider, when we consider this, you consider a new timetable for start times that would maybe allow for the middle and high school to start later.
Subcommittee to consider that? That would.
No, what I'm saying is as the arrangements are considered, like, you're gonna have to talk about transportation or what have you, I would imagine, and to me, that ties in start time. I don't wanna make you do more work, but I think that we as a community, if we're gonna make all these, we have to layer that in.
Yeah, and that may be a separate piece of it once
Yeah.
we have a final kind of decision, but the reality of it is, I think before a shovel gets turned, we're probably talking at least 3 years.
For a shovel, 23, I would anticipate.
All right, so 2.
So that's 2.
So summer of 23, yeah.
Okay.
Yep, for the first one. So we did actually discuss that, and we had it as one of the aspects in the survey, and thought it was just a bridge too far. At this stage, we didn't want to confuse the issue. It's really about options right now, and when we get down to the point where you're at maybe 2 or 3 options, then it's a more nuanced pro and con that you'd have to include it at that point.
And that's fine by me, but I think it has to be part of our thought process.
Yep, and it is, but we didn't want to confuse the issue
Fair
right
enough.
now.
No, that's good.
But Amy, the all-encompassing piece of it is a really interesting one. The focus in communities across the country has always been on high school start time. And I've headed up a couple of those committees over the years, probably the one Eamon was talking about 10 years ago. And what was really interesting, I watched in a neighboring community, they had a high school start time discussion, and then it turned into, an elementary discussion where there was opposition, for different reasons. So it was really interesting. So it's really, your idea is a really interesting one of encompassing all of them together.
Well, and I did read on our listserv that some people in the state are putting forth the fact that the state should consider making a massive shift statewide to make it easier for the communities to, because that's part of the challenge is if we do something and our neighboring towns don't, it causes issues too. So anyway, I just wanted to mention that. Black cloud.
Awesome work by the subcommittee.
Yeah, thank you guys, and
Bravo.
I wish you could see your faces. They're all just initials on the wall.
I think
Really
they're tired.
Really good job.
Oh, they're all popping back on now.
So,
Thumbs up.
would you guys be able to come up with, I guess then, when you want to start doing kind of public input gathering?
Yeah, so at the April 7th meeting, we'll finalize the survey and create dates for those.
Excellent.
Yep.
Is there anything that, I know the subcommittee presented out, but is there anything that they might want to add based on questions that we've asked, or?
Yeah, you're being consistent with our meetings. We always start with the wraparound, and we, per our chair, and we finish with the wraparound.
So would anybody on the subcommittee like to make any comments? You'd have to unmute
Stan, you're
Stan.
muted.
Stan, you're muted.
Stan, you're on mute.
This happens in our meetings too.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
All I wanted to add was, I echo Ms. Vitsky-Lynch's comments about, how effective this committee has been so far. And we still have some challenges facing us. I mean, trying to get the data to be organized in a way that is going to be useful to you and to the community is going to be a continuing challenge, and we still have to work on that. But we'll get there. We'll figure that out. We know we can make that all work out. So it's going to be helpful. And I'm glad to hear that you think we've done well so far. So that's encouraging. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
Do you want to call on people?
Does anybody else on the committee have any comments or questions?
Or answers to Andrew's questions?
I did want to just throw in one quick thing. Mr. McDevitt mentioned the Foster Farm territory. We definitely have discussed that as a significant portion of our considerations. So definitely that's been on our minds. The other aspect I wanted to throw out there is cost was mentioned, and I think any solution here is going to be pretty expensive. Some are going to be more expensive than others. And I think one of the questions that we should make sure to ask ourselves is, are we doing if we want to do this once, I don't think we want to be coming back 10 years later and deciding we need to do some kind of changes again. And I think that's one of the I don't know if I'd call it flexibility, but we want to make sure that we're doing this with enough leeway to guide us for a long time.
Excellent.
Thank you, Michael. Anyone else? I think we're good.
All right.
Great job.
Thank
Great
you all
job,
very,
guys.
very much. We look forward to seeing you again. And that brings us to the end of our agenda. Does anyone have anything that they'd like to add or comment on before we consider adjournment?
I'll go very quickly. One, I just want to take a quick, again, I never know where the camera is, but I want to thank the town of North Andover for returning me. Very excited to continue, as we saw tonight, with the high school change and potential for space changes. There's some really awesome, exciting work to be done, and I'm thrilled to be here. And I'm thrilled to see Pam here as well. We haven't had a new face on the committee in a very long time, so it's great. I'm the lone guy, but that's okay. But I'm thrilled to see you here, and I really look forward to the perspective that you bring from teaching and a neighboring town, and I think having a younger child and that elementary perspective is really great and important as well. So you've got I think the youngest child on the board, right?
She does?
Yes, yes.
Now that David's not.
Not the oldest, but the youngest, at least the youngest. So thrilled to have you here.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. I'm excited.
I was just going to say almost the same thing. Congratulations to you both. Looking forward to continuing working with you, Andrew, and working with you, Pam.
You have anything else?
No, I'm just excited to be here.
Excellent.
There's a lot of information all at once, but it was all
No,
really
it is.
good.
It's same for all of us.
Yeah,
too.
exactly.
I don't think I spoke for my first 3 meetings. So,
So, and I also appreciate the community. There was a lot going on this year, and there's been a lot of participation in watching our meeting, which I think has been great. But I hope that you've seen tonight that now that, we're going back to school doesn't mean that you should tune out. We need you to stay because there's a lot coming up here. So, and I was also going to point out that when I first joined the committee, I took the place of a woman who had taken the place of a woman. I was the only woman, and now Andrew's the only man. So he pointed that out as well. It's pretty interesting.
Really? Oh my God.
Yeah, because I took Zora, and she was the only woman.
That's right.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I think Lori before that. So interesting
Pendulum has
shift.
swung.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second?
No.
For the motion.
Oh, sorry.
So moved.
Second. Okay, so motion by Ms. Vitsky and second by Ms. Petrowski.
Out of order.
Any other commentary? Then Ms.
Yes.
Vitsky? Ms. Petrowski?
Yes.
Mr.
Yes.
McDevitt? And I vote yes. Thank you all very much, and we will see you on the 15th of April. Have a great evening.